cut number 2.
Hello, Ilya. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Sitesh. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. After a run and 15 kilometers walk, a little bit tired.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just like a quick introduction, why don't we start just like going through your, like, I don't know, 2 minute summary of where you start from and how do you
Yeah.
come across this thing?
Sure. Hey, thanks. First of all, thanks a lot for inviting me to your podcast.
Oh, thanks for taking.
I'm very flattered. Very
Yeah.
flattered, and hope I will have something interesting to say. Yeah, a little bit about myself. Yeah, my name is Ilya, and I'm Georgian.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if a lot of people heard about Georgia. It's a very small country located in between Turkey and Russia on the coast of the Black Sea.
Yeah.
And I've been living in all sorts of countries, starting from Russia, Bulgaria, currently residing in Netherlands. And yes, I've been also living for a few years in my home country as well. Um, yeah, I'm a software engineer. I write code. Um, and I currently in Netherlands. I really like it here. I'm thinking of actually turning myself Dutch. Uh,
Turning myself.
so hopefully that will happen.
Yeah.
Yes, hopefully that will happen this year. We'll see if Corona will allow me to pass all my exams, and yeah, so hopefully this year this will happen, but we'll see. Yeah.
Fair enough. It's like first introduction, like Georgia. Before you, I had there's this comedy show, Conan show. And he has an assistant who is from Georgia. So he went to Georgia to shoot some things from the country.
I have to correct you. I have to correct you. She's actually from Armenia.
Really?
Yes. I watched this show many times, and I really loved it. Unfortunately, he recently, stopped shooting
Ah,
the Conan O'Brien show. But she's from Armenia, actually. Yes, she's a very
Armenia. Oh, right,
funny.
right. Ah, my bad. Then.
Yes,
Yeah, I remember.
yes.
Ah,
Yeah,
damn it. All right.
yes. And I've seen this show when they went to Armenia. That was actually pretty funny.
Yeah, that was like little funny
Yeah,
that way. But
yes.
like, so which city like did you grow up in Georgia?
Well, actually, my story starts with a not very fortunate situation,
Yeah.
and namely the war. So
Oh,
when I was 3, yes, I was born in Georgia, and when I was 3, there was a war in 1991, and the war with one of the autonomous republics which are within the Georgia, which were backed by Russia back then. So yes, it was a war, and we had to flee the country. And since I was 3, I've been living in Russia, namely in St. Petersburg. I grew up there, and yeah, I think till I was 18, and then I moved on. But growing up in Georgia, yeah, obviously I don't remember much, but I have a few kind of like I don't know how to say, it's not
wow.
really a memory, but it's kind of like a
Wow.
feeling that I
Memories.
had. Yeah, but it's definitely positive, and I really enjoyed it there. I remember my father always tells me this story as me being 3 year old, and helping him to renovate our house,
Yeah.
and holding him the hammer, or some instruments,
Yeah.
and yeah, it feels like as I remember these times, but obviously that might be just my imagination.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
Yes,
brain kind of makes up all kind of memories, I suppose. Did you go back after 18 to back to Georgia, or did you move out of?
yes, yes, yes. When I was 18, I moved from Russia. My parents, they wanted to go somewhere else for a long time, and finally, yeah, they decided to do that, and we moved to Bulgaria, actually,
Hmm.
for a couple of years. My father had some business there, so it was mostly just due to his business activities.
Yeah.
And then 2 years after, we decided to go back to Georgia. especially we were back then we were really inspired by all the developments that were happening in Georgia back then. We were inspired that we kind of had this idea that Georgia is kind of like on this path of prosperity, economic development, and it's kind of like a time to go back and then maybe start something there. And which happened. I went there and I lived there for 5 years. I finished my university there and started my first job. Actually, found myself as a software engineer in Georgia due to some uh, a number of funny events.
Yeah.
But yes, I've been living there, and even though like I've probably spent less than 10 years overall in this country, I definitely keep it close dear to my heart, and it's my country, and I really love it, and I wish nothing but the best to my people.
Yeah.
But I tend to think that I'm more of a kind of um, a global thinker in a sense. I'm not really um, I don't really have that a strong attachment to an identity. I'm myself, and I have my own views.
Fair enough. Do you think like you'll consider I guess like it's kind of like interesting because when you go outside the like a country, then you really understand the country. It's kind of like a comparative feeling kicks in, I guess, suppose. So in that way, do you think like at this point, if you have to like say, will you call yourself like more you are affected by Russia or like Georgian roots? Because like I don't know how your family or the
Yeah,
was yeah.
good question. I haven't been thinking about it much, to be honest, but I think it's a mixture of it's a mix. I think as you move to a new country, you start to consume a little bit of each of the cultures that you experience. And I definitely have a lot of Russian in my character, as well as Georgian, and as well as Dutch probably already, because I live here for 5 years, and it's quite a long period that allows you kind of to start how do you say that, kind of experiencing your life in a Dutch way, right? So but I think it's a mix of everything, and I definitely believe that uh, I believe that I'm 95% Georgian, but there is this 5% that is coming from everywhere.
Right.
Yes, and in terms of contrast, indeed, like every time when I go back to Georgia, which unfortunately doesn't happen often enough in the past few years, but I do see a lot of developments that are happening in the country, and I think it's a very dynamic environment in terms of politics, in terms of economy, and culture and society. So it's definitely every time I go there, I see something new. So that's yeah, I guess that's good.
Fair enough. Do your parents live in the capital? How do you call it? Tbilisi?
Tbilisi,
Tbilisi.
yes. So no, well, my parents are currently separated.
Yeah,
My father lives in St. Petersburg. He went back there a few years ago, and my mom stayed in Tbilisi together with my sister. Yes,
I see.
so yeah.
Interesting. Like, what was the language do people speak primarily? Is it like a Russian or it's different?
It's very complicated. It's probably not as complicated as in India, I guess, but we do speak a few languages in the country. So the primary language, the national language is Georgian, but besides that, we have um, a lot of different ethnic groups in the country that either adopted some sort of dialect of a language, or um, yeah, came up with their own language or their different alphabet that they're using. So, for example, Abkhazia, which is an autonomous republic, where my mom is from, actually. So they speak Abkhazian language, which is completely different from Georgian,
mm,
and in alphabet and in the way it sounds. Like you won't be able to find any similarities.
mm,
Um, and besides that, yeah, we have Svan people who live in the mountains, and they have their own language there.
mm,
And I myself, I'm actually not kind of 100% Georgian, because my ethnic group is actually Megrelian. So
mm,
it's a different group. We have our own language,
mm,
but funny enough, we don't have our own alphabet. So we don't write Megrelian. So
mm.
if you will, so all the experiences and history and all the knowledge has been transferred orally. So
Right.
the culture has been just basically never written anywhere, other than maybe in some Georgian books.
It's like I was also
But
when I like found like I think today also like 5,000 active languages around the world. I think about like 95% of them are not written language at all. It's just like a verbal language, the form that exists. So there's no alphabet to it.
exactly, yeah. An interesting fact about this is that all those 5,000 languages and dialects can be trimmed down to the 12, uh, the kind of the base languages,
Right.
which are like Cyrillic languages, and Latin languages. And one of them is actually Georgian, because Georgian alphabet is very unique. It's only Georgians are using the alphabet, and yeah, it was never adopted by anyone else.
Like alphabets is not the Cyrillic. It's a different alphabet that you guys have.
No,
Oh,
no,
interesting.
no. It might seem as a kind of like a mix of maybe Indian and Arabic.
Hmm.
I think that would be a fair description. So it's a mix. It's kind of like something in between, I think, or maybe even Thai. But it's a lot of like a curly signatures, so a lot of curls everywhere. It's
Yeah.
yeah, but it's nothing like Cyrillic.
What's your favorite word from Georgian that you understand remember now?
Well, actually, I'm not. Well, my Georgian is not. I don't even think that it's fluent.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, yeah, I wasn't able to. Living there for 5 years, I wasn't able to kind of master this language, even though it's my native language.
Yeah.
Well, it's my mother language. Um, but I have a lot of favorite words. They're mostly related to food.
Yeah.
Uh,
Has to be.
and yes, it's mostly food related words.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
and yeah, so probably a khachapuri, which is a Georgian dish.
yeah.
It's there are different variations of this dish, but the most famous one, which is actually quite famous here in Amsterdam as well, because there's one restaurant who popularized it. So it's just like a boat made of dough with a little bit of cheese inside, and some egg and some butter, and then you break a piece of dough and then dip inside the cheese, and then you enjoy it. So
Uh,
that's the dish is called khachapuri, and it's probably my favorite word.
I've not been to Georgian restaurants. I need to ask you that one. I'll take that one
Yes,
where it is next time.
highly recommend it.
Fair enough. So that's like a kind of like interesting thing. Like if you remember like how you grew up, do you feel like your household was like did you speak Georgian with your parents or are they a different language?
No, I think we've mostly spoken Russian,
Yeah,
because yes, my mother, she only spoke Abkhazian and Russian.
yeah,
Historically, just was like that, and very few Abkhazians can speak Georgian, due to some political reasons.
yeah.
But yeah, so Russian was my primary language. My father always wanted to teach me Georgian, and he had such a like a high number of attempts to actually do that. But without day-to-day practice, I think you will never be able to learn the language to the yeah
It-
to the
It's like
extent that
it's like how fluent we are with Dutch language. It shows that after 4 years, how fluent we can get with
yeah
minimal practice at this point.
yeah exactly yeah.
Well, if you have to like I guess like you won't probably like have this intuitive feel of that one like because like just like lived experience is a little bit less in Georgia for you. But if you have to like try to spot like what do you think like people value from Georgia, like what do people really care about in their life?
Very good question, and I think it can be trimmed down to a few things. Um, Although Georgia is a quite a modern society. I mean, um, in the last 20 years, the mindset shift that happened in especially young people in Georgia is tremendous.
Mm,
So the difference between my father and his father, my grandfather, is not as big as the difference in the mindset between me and my father.
mm,
And the internet here contributes a lot.
mm,
So, and I think it really depends who you ask. If there is the young population is very, yeah, a more progressive part of the society, which are interested or bothered by a very different things that the older population is bothered with. And this divide, I think, uh, uh, is visible way more than in many other countries.
mm,
Um, so, but the older population, which is like my father's age and above, they obviously are very, very conservative. So Georgia is a very religious country with probably one of the highest penetrations of religion in the country.
mm,
If I'm not wrong, I've read numbers of 97% of people in the country considering them to be religious. And
mm.
it's a mono-religious country, so it's Orthodox Christianity.
Okay.
Um, so, with that being said, yes, religion is the foundation of people's morale and what they think and what they want in life. So yes, so it's mostly what we care is the family and children and grandchildren and their success and health. So this is kind of like the probably the biggest topic. Whenever I have a conversation with my grandparents, they only ask me three things: is everything okay? Are you healthy? And do you have food to eat? So that's kind of like a three pillars.
Right.
um, so, but if you go a bit, towards the younger people, I think here you start to have a very big diversity in what people, just think about or wonder around.
Yeah.
So I think IT industries getting really big in Georgia. I think a lot of people are going into software engineering, um, and yeah, which is I think is really good. Um, my best friend back in Georgia was from the world of politics.
Mm,
So currently, he is the advisor to the European ambassador in Georgia,
mm,
and with him, I kind of like introduce. He kind of helped me introduce myself into a world of politics,
mm.
Georgian politics as well as the international politics,
Yeah.
U.S. politics. So I think politics is a big topic to an average Georgian,
Mm,
and it's something that is really drives a lot of conversation. Day-to-day conversations with your neighbors.
yeah.
Um, yes, and due to the fact that the Georgian politics they were quite dynamic and quite eventful in the past 20 years. So therefore, yes, everyone is talking about that pretty much every day, other than work, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's yeah, I think the average Georgian is very religious.
Yeah.
He believes in um, he believes in patriarchic kind of how do you say that?
Patriarchy, family, patriarchy, society
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff.
So the man is kind of like a leader, like so
Right.
they are we all grew up like with this idea that the man is the one who is kind of you know
Yeah.
uh,
It's a leader of
doing the
the house,
job.
leader of the house, or leader of the things, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
everything goes from that,
yeah,
I suppose.
yeah. and yeah, politics, and this topic of Russia is very heated nowadays, especially, and
Yeah.
maybe in the last few years, because
Do
we had.
do people favor Russia or anti Russia generally?
Well, it differs, but I think the vast majority of country are very much against Russia,
Mm.
and due to the fact that we had two wars with Russia in the last 20 years.
Okay.
And yes, the last one being this 7-day war. Hopefully, there was a very short war, but it was quite a tragic event. Obviously, it happened in 2008 during the Summer Olympic Games in China.
Mhm.
So yes, so I think most people are still, uh, yeah, uh, more pro-Western rather than pro-Russia. So
Because
I
like
think the
yeah, go ahead.
I think the former president, Mikhail Saakashvili, who was the leader of the country from 2003 till 2012, if I'm not mistaken. So during his terms, he transformed. Well, first of all, he turned the country upside down.
Yeah. Good way,
In
bad.
in Sorry.
Good way or bad way? Upside down.
Well, in both ways. So
Okay.
there are some positives and some negative outcomes of his legacy.
Yeah.
But I tend to believe that they are mostly positive. But he's a very controversial figure. But
Mm.
he was the one who changed the mindset of a young person. So he introduced a lot of different programs in the country,
Yeah.
and one of them being inviting 10,000 foreigners, English speakers, to Georgia, um, putting them to be hosted by different Georgian families, so that they can teach
Nice.
people English.
Interesting.
So that was quite like a big kind of program that was running for a few years, and yes, so all this like he sent a lot of people. He provided thousands and thousands of scholarships
Mm.
for different students to study in the United States, UK, and that definitely contributed a lot to you know kind of like a uh, um, to helping the new generation, to stand on the path of, on the right path, right, of the path of education, building the business the way it's supposed to be built, and not doing some shady
Right.
things as they used to be done before in Georgia. So yes, he changed a lot in the mindset of a person in the last 10 years
Interesting.
while he was a yeah
Like, Georgia was part of USSR, right? A Soviet,
yeah.
basically. Uh, was that like one of the reasons, you guys also moved to Russia, and then moving back also after the Berlin Wall fell and all the things?
Uh, well, not really. Well, actually, the number of problems that we have in our region are again the legacy of the USSR's problems that they've created.
Yeah.
So, but the yeah the well when we had our first war, like the USSR already collapsed.
Yeah.
But the origin of the problem started way back during the USSR times.
Right.
So definitely there's a lot of echoes that we are still hearing even nowadays.
Mm.
But to be fair, I think USSR is by most people is treated as something negative that
Mm.
happened to us, because I personally also think that it's definitely a negative thing,
Mm.
because before the USSR and before the Bolsheviks and Lenin, Georgia was a quite liberal place.
Mm.
It was, in a sense, it was like Amsterdam.
Mm.
So people would come to Georgia, and especially to capital of Georgia, Tbilisi, to trade. So
Okay.
it was a trade center.
Mm.
And yes, that obviously attracts different people from different countries, from neighboring countries, right? And then that creates this multicultural environment and society where liberalism kind of thrives, right?
Mm.
And even if you read the books by different authors and the poets at the time, they were very liberal in in the content. That's something that would probably even never be written nowadays. It would be considered something not normally accepted, especially by someone
That's
religious.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Georgia would be on a very different position nowadays if USSR wouldn't happen. I think we
Hmm.
would be, yeah, we would be in my view, we would be in a much better place.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, like, I was also like curious, like, how was it for you to like? I guess first time it might not have been different. Like when you said like you lived in Petersburg, Saint Petersburg, right?
Yes.
So did you feel like as a because that's always interesting because I like fully grew up in India, so I was curious like when people like when you feel like at home like, well, I'm from Georgia, my family is there, but you are growing up around the people who are like native Russians as per se. Did you feel like as a sense at that point it was like, well, it's just like how it is now?
Well, I don't know. To be honest, it's a
It felt
hard
natural,
one.
I suppose, at that point, right? Because it was just like there was no legacy behind it for you personally, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's so the thing is that Russian, like everyone who lived in a USSR, who was part of USSR, are in a sense a very um, so USSR left a footprint on every person who lived in this country.
Hmm.
And if you go to Lithuania, which was part of USSR, and you go to Uzbekistan, which was also part of the uh, USSR, if I'm not okay, let's say Kazakhstan. I'm not sure about Uzbekistan, but
Right.
as far as I know, Kazakhstan was the part of USSR, even though they're very different, right?
Right.
There is a Baltic country on the left, and there is a Asian country on the right.
Yeah.
I think, and they both speak the same language,
Mm-hmm.
but in but they are very similar in their character. They're very they will understand each other. They have very similar values. If you're talking about you know people, I think above 50, I think they are still from that time, and they will be fine talking to each other. They won't have that many differences. Maybe nowadays they will, because again, Lithuania is now a part of Europe, right? So, and Kazakhstan is kind of their own country with some questionable leader in place. So yeah, but I think they will have a lot of commonalities, and the same is goes for Russian and Georgian. So when going back and forth from Russia to Georgia, I wouldn't say that I'm going to a completely different world.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Does that answer your question in a
Yeah,
way?
yeah, I suppose. I suppose. I was just
Yeah.
like when your interactions will happen with like at that point probably it was part of same empire. Like I don't know after like it actually split USSR into like all these different countries. They changed like how people will interact, or it was just like hushed in like a background. Like, well, we are just from here. It didn't come up in generally.
Hmm. Um, well, so it depends, right? So if you're talking about if you're talking to someone from Baltic country,
Yeah,
so Lithuania, Latvia, or Estonia,
yeah,
which again were part of USSR, they are very pro Europe, right? So they're part of Europe. They want to live in this. They value the European values, right? This is something that they want to attach to,
mm,
while others, like for example, I might say Azerbaijan or Armenia, they might have completely different future that they set up for themselves. But Georgia, I think, is quite unique in their area, in our region, in the sense that we really want to be a part of Europe, and we really want to be we really value the European views, and when it comes to politics or um, uh, yeah, various aspects. So we are very unique in this region, and I think if we were geographically in a bit different position, we would probably already be a part of Europe if we were a bit closer
yeah.
geographically to Europe. So, for example, like in terms of corruption, we are in the same level as Poland and Latvia. So we are right in between them. I actually double checked it before I was having a conversation with you. But
Yeah.
so by very like and the rule of law works relatively good in Georgia. You know, it's a day and night if you can compare, for example, with Russia, right, where it's in my view it's a tool for political tool.
Yeah.
So I think in different aspects, like the reason why we've improved a lot in the last 20 years is just because we really want to, you know, move along together with Europe. So
Right.
I think there was a big driver that one day we will be a part of Europe. But again, it's a quite interesting because we are surrounded by a number of countries that have a completely different idea of the future.
Right.
So we are kind of yeah
But
the last
since like the kind of like a breakup with old boss USSR, do you think what kind of system people have adapted as a government policy? Is it like a
yeah
parliamentary,
yeah
presidential?
yeah. So currently, so well, first it was a um, I don't know how you call it, but it's well, we had a president as a head of the state,
Okay.
and a number of ministers that were, you know, dealing with the various aspects of the country.
Yeah.
But after I think it was around 2008 when we've adopted a parliamentary multi-party system.
Hmm.
So basically, currently the president is just a ceremonial figure. So they're serving quite informal role in a country, and the prime minister is kind of like the head of the government and the leader, political leader of the country.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there were a lot of developments and changes that happened in the political arena in Georgia, but overall it led to, in my view, quite a healthy environment. So we have a multi-party system. We have a three or four parties currently in the parliament who are holding at least one seat, and various other parties who are constantly, delivering their agendas. And to me, it feels like a environment which is close to how it should look. And yeah, I'm really proud that about that we've managed to actually have this, healthy dialogue in the country and not just some
Do you feel like
single authoritarian leader.
at some point you can see yourself living in Georgia again, or do you think like that just like
Oh,
not
absolutely.
really?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, well, I think so. Georgia is like in 20 years, Georgia might be completely something else, right? So something I never envisioned it being. So I definitely see myself maybe not living there permanently, but I see myself spending a lot of time in Georgia because I think the reality is that my business and my career is probably going to be attached to Europe some form or shape. But I definitely want to spend. I plan to buy a house in Georgia actually
Oh, wow.
in a few years at least. Well, not right now, but at least in a few years, I'd like to have a house there.
Yeah.
So I definitely see myself going there and spending a summer, for example, working from there. Hopefully it will be still possible to do in a few years,
Yeah.
because Georgia is yeah, it's quite you can go we have a sea, right? So we have a nice summer resort, and we also have quite a lot of mountains, and
Yeah.
it can be a nice ski resort for you as well during the winter.
Yeah, that
So
just reminds me, like I saw a video for 2 years back. That's my introduction to skiing. I hope it's not only that way. That like horrified me.
the one with the crazy spinning
Yeah,
elevator,
like,
yes.
wow. And I just like came from Austria skiing out before watching that video. I'm like, oh, this can happen on ski lift. I'm like, I'm not going on ski lift anymore.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah,
But I think it's well, we are like, I think every year or two they are opening a new skiing areas in Georgia, so it's definitely expanding. It's not it's not like Switzerland or Austria, but it's definitely growing and it's attracting a lot of
Yeah.
especially extreme like professional skiers or snowboarders, because we do have a lot of kind of like a wild slopes. So I think
Is
yeah.
country like a primarily like a mountainy country, or do you think because like it has the Caucasus Mountain range, right, where Caucasian word probably comes
Yes.
from, I guess.
Yes, it's mostly mountainous. Yes,
Yeah.
I think most of the country is in some sort of hill, or yeah, it's mostly mountainous. We have the Caucasian chain, as you mentioned. It's mostly on the Russian part, unfortunately, but we do have a lot of mountains, and I really love. I That's something that I miss a lot,
Yeah. In that
and
especially, right?
you
A
know,
lot of
in
mountains.
the most exactly. So every time I go to south of Belgium, for example,
Yeah.
to Ardennes, which is also pretty mountainous, I always kind of like have this feeling of as if I'm back, in Georgia, and it really reminds me of my home.
Do you
So
snowboard or
yeah,
ski? Do you do like a
yes, I snowboard, only snowboard.
yeah,
I actually learned to snowboard maybe a few years ago only,
yeah,
uh, around 5 or 6 years ago, and yeah, since then I love it.
yeah,
I missed last this winter and last winter, so I'm really craving to go back and yeah.
yeah? I love to
What
go.
about yourself? Do
Yeah,
you ski or snowboard?
I also ski, right? So like haven't been this year. So I was just looking at like, is there any country which is open right now? I can go maybe
Yeah.
in a few days there out there.
Yeah,
You know,
if you plan to go somewhere, hit me up. Maybe I'll join you.
definitely. I think that's good to know. Like Jenny, like yeah, I tried to do snowboard. Like I don't think it was my thing from first day at least. But we can parallel on the ski and the thing.
Yeah,
Um,
sounds good.
Interesting. You also said like that there was like a super interesting like coincidences. You got into IT. How did that happen? What was like a
Yeah. So well, I never knew like since I was till I was 20, I never knew that like I want to be a software engineer or I want to code or something like that. I'm very late in this game.
right,
If
right?
you look at all these kids that start coding at 7 or so,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
by the time they are in high school, they already have some businesses and they drop out, right?
yeah.
So no, in a way I was just pushed into this.
Okay.
So I had the startup idea, and the startup idea was nothing really creative, to be honest. It was at the time. Do you remember Groupon?
Good point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So at the time, it just like the Groupon and coupon and daily discount thing started.
Right.
It became this crazy thing, right? The Groupon, from I remember it like I was reading, the Groupon was the fastest growing startup in history, like
Yeah, it was a
getting
fast.
to a billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting to a billion in just 9 months or something like that, right? So, and I was definitely inspired by these numbers, and I decided, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not to actually do a clone in Georgia, right? It's
Right.
simple as that, right? Just build something like this. Georgia, it's probably gonna work. Probably Groupon is not gonna, enter Georgian market anytime soon. So I can see if I can pull this off. And I started working on this idea, writing some business plan. Like back then I was probably around 18 or 20.
Okay.
So yeah, 20. So I was stupid enough to start with business plan.
Yeah.
So but I wrote a whole bunch of papers with all sorts of smartest words that I could ever come up, and some big charts and numbers and
Right.
floating
Right.
things, whatever, some pie charts.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, I was studying in this university, which is called International Black Sea University.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's closed its doors recently, but nevertheless, it was really fun. And I had this favorite professor of mine. He was studying finance related subjects. I don't remember what it was exactly,
Mm.
but he was a nice guy. We occasionally had a cigarette together and chatting about I don't know, some business things and stuff.
Right.
And then one day I just mentioned, I never really had any intentions, but I mentioned about my idea to him, and he said, "Hey, why don't we talk about it? So come to my office next week, and I will chat."
Yeah.
So I went there. I had my business partner with me at the time. We've did a pitch, some presentation, again some numbers that I took out of nowhere.
Hmm.
So I think he really liked me. I think that's, I mean, what a lot of investors look at, right? So they look at the character, the personality.
Yeah.
So I think he liked me, and we decided to start our activities and see where we can go. Back then, again, I wasn't, I didn't know how to code, and
Yeah.
we really needed some partners, some technical partners, and I started looking. And there was another company who started a daily deals website, and I got in touch with the guys who built this website, and I offered them a partnership. And I said, "Hey, we have some money that we can, invest, and some investors behind us, and some team of very smart people, because the company that he owned actually was filled up with a whole bunch of consultants that could, help us with various business issues,
Yeah.
challenges." So, and they've agreed, and but due to various reasons, they couldn't deliver on their promise. So
Mm.
we've agreed to deliver a product at a specific date, but it fortunately never really happened. And then I got so disappointed because I always thought that the most difficult part in doing business is raising money. And then
Mhm.
I thought, I've raised money now, and then why is it not working, right? Because raising money is the most difficult thing. So
Now I should just make it rain.
and yeah, exactly. So I thought I'm gonna have money, then I'll have everything, right? So the business will go. I mean, I will hire some people. They will be writing some code, and things will just work on its own, right? But obviously, it's never the case. And yes, so and then I got pissed, and I actually thought like, why don't I do it myself? Why don't I learn it,
Right.
how to code? I thought just one weekend of sleepless nights, and then maybe I can code something.
Sounds about
Then
right.
I
I
what I
think
did, I actually come again.
sounds about right. I think that's a sufficient amount of
Yeah.
time to just build a career, I think.
So yeah, and then what I did, the first thing I did, I just opened the DevTools in your Chrome. Like
Hmm.
you can just open up the thing and then inspect the code, and then you can change some styles.
Yeah.
You can make the text a red color or something like that. And I started playing around with this,
Right.
and I kind of got fascinated by this, that I can actually change the color and it will reflect in your website, right? Whatever you're viewing. So, and I started like kind of like a learning about the styling part of the web development, then went into the other aspects of web development. And at some point I even like started some courses.
Mhm.
Back then we really didn't have that much online courses on software
Yeah.
development at the time. So yeah, it was very different times. It wasn't as easy to find free content or free courses on software engineering. So I started some classes, offline classes with a group of people, and just maybe for like a few weeks, and then I learned the basics of coding. And then I started doing it myself, like building some prototypes and things like that. And by the time I was relatively confident about my skills, and then I thought like, okay, maybe now I can do something.
Right.
And then by the time it was obviously already late. My investors, they said, we already have quite some number of competition in the country, and they're growing pretty fast, backed by some biggest banks in the country, So yes, so it all fell down. But I think there was probably one of the most uh, like one of the most important events in my life that actually defined my career, right? So it's
And
it's
and
such
that
an event, just a conversation.
And that's also like super early in your career.
Yes.
Like at that point, were you already like enrolled in computer science, or were you like studying something else?
Well, I was actually studying business administration, so it wasn't really, yeah. So it was
I see
something else.
business
I
plans.
never.
I see business plans, how they come along as we go building the
Yeah,
product.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, just a single, yeah, chat with my professor actually changed my direction of my life, really. And I wouldn't end up in Netherlands right now if I wasn't a software engineer as well, and I
Oh,
wouldn't meet the love of my life if not for that, right?
all right. Not a bad one. Do you think that's where like interestingness in like I think you also do a lot of like JavaScript like I remember like JavaScript workshops also and stuff. Do you think that like because I started very different way. I was much more interested in like problem solving and like a maths kind of things. So I was much more into like algorithmic and data science and puzzles kind of thing. I was much late to the web development party. But I see like you were like super into like started from web. So do you think like that's also kind of interesting how you get into JavaScript and all the
Yeah.
things?
Yeah, yeah. I'm a proponent of more like a practical approach to learning. So when you actually can, tinker with something and then learn along the way,
Yeah,
rather than digging yourself, digging in textbooks and
yeah. I
yeah,
think it's a fair shot. Probably to do things in a better way, I guess.
yeah.
How do you feel like? Do you think like you still? Which language do you think in?
Well, I think I'm thinking English now.
Yeah.
It becomes a quite a challenge for me to go back to Russian,
Right.
especially when I speak to some friends or family sometimes, because day to day it's English for me, and I'm trying to squeeze Dutch whenever possible, but with my girlfriend obviously we speak English,
Yeah.
and I find it difficult to be able to fully and express yourself in a bit more or less like a rich way. It gets harder and harder every time, every year to speak Russian.
Yeah.
But I think it's, yeah, I mean, it was expected. So what about you? You speak English mostly, right?
Yeah. At this point, it's like I speak Hindi. That's my uh, mother tongue. So that's limited to 1 hour per week. Like Sunday afternoon, have a call with parents. That's the limit of my speaking Hindi at this
Yeah,
point. So
yeah,
yeah, I guess you do start to short circuit that part where you go generally like you speak in like three steps, like you listen a language, you translate it back into your native thinking process, you think in that, then make a decision and then translate it back. So it's like a three steps. I think over the time it just short circuits, I think.
yeah, yeah. So true.
How
Yeah,
do you like
but
yeah, sorry.
I really hope you will make it one day to Georgia and actually be able to consume the culture. I think you definitely need to try food
Yeah.
because I think it's pretty damn good, man. You should definitely try it.
So you mentioned you
We
mentioned
do
one
have.
food. You mentioned one food. What other things will you say like should definitely try?
So we have another thing which is a kind of like a dumpling.
Yeah.
It's called khinkale,
Mm.
and yeah, it's just a big dumpling filled with the meat and a little bit of soup inside.
Mm.
And there is a very special technique how you have to eat it.
Yeah.
So you have to make a little bite on top and then drink up the juice from the inside and then eat the rest. Um, yeah, I mean, I can name quite a lot of different things, but it's a lot about this combination of tastes and spices. Maybe similar to, maybe not definitely not as rich as Indian. Variety of different spices, but we do love spices and we do love spicy food. And it's definitely not plain. It's very rich. Every time you taste something different.
Yeah.
We have a lot of different delicacies that you can try, and yeah, I mean, I think like mostly about food, right? So the
Mhm.
culture for me, the Georgian culture is mostly about food,
Right.
and there is another part of the culture which is also very important is ballet and folk music. So it's huge in Georgia. Like
Right.
my parents are from they were performing in a ballet ensemble
Yeah.
So my mom was actually dancing and my father was playing on the instrument. That's where they met, by the way.
Ah, that's
So,
actually
and then they were, yeah, and they were touring a lot, and they actually were they've been to Amsterdam a couple times, in 80s, um, and a whole bunch of countries. Yeah, currently the current assemble is actually very popular in Asia for some reason. So they
mm,
are touring a lot in China. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's a very entertaining form of ballet. So it's very acrobatic,
okay.
very artistic, a lot of different jumps and flips.
Hmm.
They also use different weapons while they're dancing. So they're using swords, and then they pretend to fight on the swords while dancing.
Right.
So it's very visually appealing, and I think a lot of people are really loving it when they see it for the first time.
Right.
So those are kind of like two most important thing about Georgian culture. I think everyone should experience in one way or another. So yeah.
Fair enough. Uh, I'll see like if I can pick up. I picked up some. So met my girlfriend also doing bachata. So I was like, I was not able to pick salsa and bachata, but I think I'll pick up next time ballet also, just in case I want to go and enjoy there also with her. We'll see. How do you like move from there to, let's say, you directly moved to Netherlands, right? After studying, I guess. How did that come across?
Yeah. Well, so a friend of mine that I've briefly mentioned earlier, he introduced me to a colleague of his, and she was Dutch.
Yeah,
She used to come there occasionally for work purposes.
yeah,
And then yeah, we used to hang out a lot, and then at some point we've developed a romantic relationship that lasted for more than a year. We've had like some sort of form of distant relationship. She used to come to Georgia, I used to come to Netherlands. And then at some point I decided that I should, move, consider permanently moving to the country, because, yeah, it was going good. And I always wanted to, I wanted to move to Western Europe for a very long time. And I thought this is kind of like a nice extra kick in the
yeah,
butt to actually do that. And I started looking for a job, and I was lucky enough to get my first offer in the first month.
yeah.
I think I was pretty lucky with this, but yeah,
What do you think? Like,
yeah, that was the reason.
what do you think? Like, was the first thing that you noticed when you actually started like living, let's say, around Western Europe or Netherlands as per se? Did you feel something very, very clearly that you had?
Yeah, I remember this very strong feeling. Um, so I lived on this street called my first uh, home was on Van Waalstraat. So it's a for those who are not familiar, it's a relatively central area of Amsterdam, a very dynamic and vibe, a lot of hipster pubs and clubs and cyclists and cars and shopping and stuff. So, and I remember that strong feeling that whenever I looked outside to the street, I had this feeling that wow, there's so much stuff going on,
Right.
so much activity. It felt like the endless world of possibilities to me.
Mm,
I had this very strong feeling like in my first like few days of being in Netherlands.
right.
But obviously, yeah, yeah, ends up being Amsterdam ends up being very small. The longer you live here, the
Right.
smaller it seems.
Right.
So at first it seems like a universe, but then it's just Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So, but I had this feeling that wow, like now I have everything that I need to actually do what I always wanted to do, right? So to achieve the success, to find a nice job, and do what I always wanted.
Mm.
What about you? What did you feel when you just arrived?
Um, I think one thing that I always used to like when I go like so I just stand on the squares of the street and just notice people. And back in India, I always like had this realization that I never felt like people smiling generally. Like people always look like
Mhm.
something is going on, they're rushing, or like they just didn't feel. And here, like like the just like image of someone biking across. it just like seems joyful. So I felt people have this
Mm-hmm.
look. People look very content. So
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of like mirrors you in you also. So that was like first feeling. I'm like, I feel a little bit content by just like looking at people here. So that was like my first
Yeah,
realization.
I 100% agree.
Yeah,
Totally agree with this. People don't really smile that much in Georgia or in Russia, you know?
right,
Smiling is in our countries is considered something, you know, unfaithful or untruthful. So
right,
if you smile, then you're not honest.
right.
So therefore they don't smile. But here, like I was so surprised like by the amount of smiles you just can get catch every day, you know, buying something in a store, you know, just you know, look at the casual the random stranger on the street, you know, you can also get a random smile as well. So it's such a it was yeah it was like a very big surprise to me to see that people are actually, you know, like genuinely happy to see each other, right? So it's like, you know, friendly environment where everyone is, you know, feeling good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big wow.
That's like also like one thing is interesting. You said like you like moved here for I guess X also, and like you came for like how is it like a attitude towards like dating and relationships from like back in the day? Do you feel like it's kind of pretty similar, or it's like a little bit different?
um I don't think it differs much, to be honest. I think dating is dating like as everywhere. It's just that you're dating different people.
Yeah,
I think this is what, yeah, I mean, but I think the overall dynamic, like getting to know the person, you know, like doing different things, going to the movies, we're still pretty much doing the same things, right? It's just that it's always different people, and I wouldn't say that yeah, the people themselves are different. So people who I dated here are not very different from people who I dated in Georgia. You know,
hmm,
I dated different people from, you know, from the with artistic background, you know, or with scientific background, or some, I don't know, yeah, various backgrounds. But yeah, it's just it's the same. I think it's um, yeah. But I think that definitely here people are way more progressive in the sense how they see the relationship.
yeah,
So the fact that I would ever like think or consider having a either a polygamous relationship or a relationship with open relationship with multiple people,
yeah,
you know, for me that would be something unheard of.
right,
Nobody would ever talk about it, nobody would ever consider something like that.
right.
So definitely there is a lot of like this new things that I opened up to myself, that people, you know, practice in the relationships. But overall the dynamic is still the same. Everyone has the same issues, everyone has the same problems, whether it's I'm sure whether it's in India, Georgia, or Netherlands, it's always the same.
But how is it like? Did you feel anything different when you, let's say, were seeing people from like a different country or something? You felt like that was like, well, that's not that different at all.
Yeah. So
I mean, like I get it. Like
I'm
fundamentally,
just trying
probably
to
like,
think of an example.
fundamentally, like people are pretty similar over the time. You'll realize it, but before you get to that point, like it's kind of like all the things is in your head probably. So curious.
Yeah, 100%. It's all in your head. You think of you might think probably, oh, this person from this continent might be so different, then you know, we'll never be able to be together. But in practice, it's you know, like it's not the case. You know, you if you are into someone, it doesn't really matter what is the background, what is the culture, what is the color of the skin, or you know, what other difference there is. So it's yeah, I really I'm a romantic type, and I really think that love is borderless.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Sounds good.
just whether
Sounds
you two guys are matching.
yeah. How do you think like the kind of like education system you went through has like influenced you, if you try to put in that perspective? Do you think there was a specific focus when you're growing up? Like how did it work? Actually, I don't know. How does this schooling work generally?
In Russia, the schooling is, yeah, it's quite different from the Netherlands in particular. We do have uh, 10 grade, uh, um, kind of like a hmm, I can't find the word, but so uh, so we have a 10 grade schooling system before you go to the university.
Okay.
So we have like a preliminary school, the middle school, and the high school, but they're all kind of like, we don't really have a big difference between the middle school and high school. You know, it's just
Yeah.
one school for us.
Yeah.
So it's just 10 grades, 10 years. Some people finish earlier if they are a bit more outstanding in their
Yeah.
achievements.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and then like after 10th grade, you decide whether, well, recently in Russia, they've implemented this united examination that gives you a specific score. And
Mm.
with this score, you have a list of universities you can apply to.
Mm.
But before that, there were no, you know, it was just enrollment exams in various universities. If you would pass this exam, you would be able to enroll and study there. What I think is a big difference with Netherlands is the fact that you have these different levels, right? So I don't remember exactly what are they called, but
Yeah. Havio,
um,
Preview, and
Havio,
yeah.
yes, yes. So what I find a bit pity is that these levels, they already predefine your future in a sense.
Mm.
Yes, they say you can kind of like go from a lower, like you can go from a lower level straight to the university, but it's very hard to do, but it's possible. So it's just too many barriers for a person to determine or at least you know get a chance to be successful in life. So go like if you were not, if you were pretty bad at high school, it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be bad in university, right? Maybe you're going to pick the subjects that you're interested in. So but therefore, like throughout my experience, I became a big opponent of a
Mm.
traditional education.
Yeah.
I really, I was never in good relationship with my
School system.
professors and my teachers, so I was a problematic kid. But nevertheless, I ended up to be a decent person. I have my job, and I'm a valuable member of a society. I think I'm paying my taxes. I'm just a good guy. So but my grades never really defined me, right? So my grades are just grades. My yeah. So therefore I think that my ideal education would be something more open, right? So I think my
Did,
children will have way more freedom when it comes to picking what they want to study.
did you feel like there was a like specific focus on hard sciences and stuff like that? Like we call STEM in your during schooling process. Do you feel like that was more valuable thing to do, or people were like nudged to go towards that? Like I'm just curious because like I see a lot of history from like this before the USSR when Cold War was happening and all the things like these like amazing like rocket scientists and the things that was happening in USSR. And the, like people were like they were like, well, you have this computer, you just learn to program, and then someone will just become expert
Mhm.
in the world basically just by doing that. Did you feel like that was kind of like a still there, or it was pretty free going?
No, I think it was very different from the times when there was this space race
Yeah.
and this high pace of development in Soviet Union. It was like from the after the Second World War till Khrushchev. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was end of 60s. So um, I think yes, it's I don't like you do get a lot of talented people in Russia. Like
Mm.
the Russia is very diverse and a very rich country with a lot of smart people there. Um, and back then, like they just so they had this idea, right? So that the Soviet Union has to win a space race,
Mhm.
and the government did everything to achieve this goal. So
Yeah.
they invested a lot of money and time and education and in mathematics and physics, and all these things. But it was the government, there was the political goal, right? So there was the byproduct of a political, direction.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I find pity, so when Russian government wants something, then they, um then something good happens, right? So what I mean is like, if it's not for the space race, maybe the Russian education would look very different right now, and maybe they wouldn't have these brightest mathematicians who won plenty of Nobel prizes. So that's something that I tend to think about. But nevertheless, yes, I think Russians do invest a lot in science, and yes, but I wasn't really a numbers guy. Like I was something in between. I didn't really know what I am. I
Mm.
neither really loved literature neither numbers. There was this one subject that I enjoyed so much that I passed all exam. I did like I think I've scored like the best
Mm.
scores in geometry.
Okay.
So geometry for me was I don't know, I was obsessed with it, and I've spent so much time learning, and I really love drawing all this, like using this circle, to it was something that I just was, never mind like spending time on it.
Hmm.
So, but I wasn't really smart enough to invest a bit more time in this, and maybe my parents didn't notice my obsession with geometry,
Mm.
or so maybe I would be an architect, or I don't know, like
You call yourself
so
artist.
many things.
I think geometry also counts as art. I think that you can
Yeah,
bring
yeah,
it. But
yeah.
did you feel like it was?
So that's why probably I like.
Yeah.
So that's why probably I like seeing pixels on the screen, right? So it's in a sense like a also visual structure, right? So I'm a front end engineer, and I build interfaces. So I think that's also partly why I stuck to this.
Fair enough. Uh, easy question. After your lived experience, communism or capitalism?
Neither,
No. What?
neither.
What?
I think well, or rather, the better answer would be a mix.
Hmm.
Um, so I think there are some good things about communism or socialism, and there are a lot of good things about capitalism.
Hmm.
But I think Scandinavian countries, they made the best out of both worlds. I think this is what we should more or less going towards, because by all the numbers, they are out passing the rest of the world. In the number of happy people in the country, number of rich people in the country. I mean, rich by average, average household. Yes, there are some factors like natural resources and things that contributed kind of to this, but I think overall their approach to how they treat people in a country, I think, is something that should be taken as an example by many.
True.
Yeah. So but I thought I am a pure capitalist, but I
Yeah.
realized that I'm not when I moved to Netherlands.
Hmm. Well, these countries do call themselves capitalists, so
Yes,
there's
they
no
do.
thought of them a socialist or anything like that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. We did cover, like, what else do you think we should know about you or Georgia in general?
Um,
What's your message for the happy life?
if only I knew. But I just think that so my probably main message would be my in my life I've had so much luck,
Right.
and and so much, what's the opposite of luck?
Um, Unlucky. Or
Unluck.
the
So
yeah.
lots of luck and unluck.
Yeah.
But I just what I've learned from my past experience is that we always need to take what life gives you. So what I mean is take these chances that life gives you, and take them to the fullest, use them as much as possible, so that you won't regret,
Yeah.
and for me, like, there were a lot of things that happened to me that were so coincidental, but I somehow managed to grab on those few coincidences that led me to a much better future.
Fair enough.
So yeah, I think that would be my message. Just
When life
use every
when life gives you
Mhm.
lemon, make a lemonade.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Fair enough. Well, what's next for you, Ilya? What do you want to do ahead?
I honestly don't know. I don't have my 5-year plan. I don't
No,
have my 1 month plan. I have no idea. No, I'm just
doing
I'm
it.
just waiting for my next lucky day when something else will follow me.
Let's hope vaccinations finish fast enough so we can find those
Yeah,
things outside also.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Let's hope for that.
Fair enough. Thanks a lot, Ilya, for taking time to talk about it. A lot of cool stuff I think we were able to touch today. And yeah, thanks a lot.
I really enjoyed it, Sitesh. I felt like a celebrity. You asked me so many questions. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, perfect. And I'll hopefully catch you around soon enough.
For sure. Cheers.
Cool.
Bye bye.
Have a good evening.